Okay, so what I wanted to start with is, we talked about sandpaper yesterday, or yeah, I think it was yesterday, and I wanted to make sure that you understand this point about sandpaper. What I'm doing is I'm folding it, and I am going to cut it just by folding it. So never use scissors to try to cut sandpaper. It's very simple to fold it. Now, I'm going to be talking about this machine, which is a palm sander. So when I cut this to fit on the palm sander, I have to make sure that I cut a sheet that's a little bit longer than half, or else it's not going to fit. So with the palm sander, it has these levers that kind of flop open, and what that does is it opens this thing right here. Okay, and the sandpaper fits right inside of that thing, and I'll show you in a second. Okay, so it fits right in there, and then this tightens it right here. Okay. And then you fold it over and do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm going to do that real quick. So you got to make sure that you cut it correctly so that you can get the sandpaper to go on there. Hold on one second. I'll lower this down so you guys can see the table. So this kind of rotates and vibrates at the same time. I have a couple of these, I think 3 or 4 of them. A lot of times this pad gets worn out, and then you start to get marks from the screws that hold the pad on. So you want to make sure that the pad is good before you start to use it. Now, there's not too many ways you can get hurt by this. There really isn't. Unless you were going to hold it on your hand and sand your hand until you bled, there isn't too many ways you can get hurt by it. But you have to know how to put the sandpaper on and take it off and change it. Okay, that right there is with 80 grit. As you can tell, I rounded off that corner. But you can change the grit to make this smoother, to make this smoother, to make the edges smoother. So it's a real useful tool. It's not like sanding by hand. I know we've been sanding by hand. I showed you how to use sandpaper by hand, and you'll get to the point where you're able to use these tools. The other thing I want to mention about these tools is this. You're not going to be able to sand with these tools on this table, or on these tables when you get in here. Okay, we're going to use a table that's back in the back of the room. It's a sanding table. It actually has a vacuum connected to it to draw all the dust down, and I want to try to keep the dust away from the work area so that we don't have to do as much sweeping and so on, so we have a nice sanding table that we do all the sanding on. So you're using a palm sander, you need to use it on the sanding table, not here on the workbenches. Okay, the workbenches is for cutting, assembling projects, but not for sanding. We sand on the sanding table. One other thing, since we're here, and I'm kind of squirreling, but okay, this is not a bottle of Gatorade. It is actually a glue. I've put glue into it. The other thing that you have to know is that we don't glue on these work tables. We glue on the glue table, which is back on the right side of the classroom. So do not remove these. When you get to class, do not remove these from the glue table. Any gluing is to be done on the glue table. All right. So, okay, this tool right here is also a palm sander or finish sander, and it actually is an oscillating sander because it moves back and forth. And the sandpaper just peels off of it. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. You want to make sure that it fits pretty close to being in center, and then okay, so same thing applies. You can use these at the sanding table, but not at the work tables. You have to, every once in a while, empty this out. As you can tell, that's pretty full. Make sure you empty it out before you use it, or after you use it, empty it out for the person that comes behind you to use it. I have different types of grids from 80 down to 220 so that you can sand your project properly. So pretty simple. Again, you're not going to hurt yourself. The safety tip on this is always remember to turn it off before you put it away. Don't just unplug it and leave it running, because then someone will do what I did when we came back, plug it in, and all of a sudden the thing is running, it's on the table, it falls off the table. These are pretty indestructible, but you never know, it might fall a certain way and break off a piece, and then we're down a sander. So by all means, please make sure that you turn them off after you use them and put them away. So this is also a palm sander. It's an oscillating palm sander. Okay, this machine here is a belt sander. Now, the whole thing about this thing is that if you start to turn it on and this isn't clamped down to the table in some way, or it has some kind of a brace next to it, it's going to fly out. So let's just take, for example, that you're using this over on you need to have something on it so that the board doesn't get away from you. So it's up against this board here, so it's not going to fly out from the table. So you want to make sure, because it'll fly out. I have different types of sandpaper for this also. The trick is to get it on here correctly, and that's just an adjustment that you do on the wheels to make sure it's in the right place. Okay. This is a belt sander. It takes off a lot of material at a time. It's not for finished work. Sometimes when we're doing cutting boards and things like that that we can't take to the big sander, the stationary sander, then we use a belt sander to do that with. It collects a lot of dust. Make sure you empty the dust bag after you use it. Yes. You can't. On the camera, yeah. You can't see it? Okay. Yeah, because I see the screen. I have myself pinned, so I can see exactly what you guys should see. Anyway, I'll keep going. So belt sander is another machine that the only way you can get hurt on this machine is if you do something dumb. Okay? You try to play with it, you try to mess with it, you try to adjust something, that's the way you're going to get hurt. If you use it properly, you're not going to have any problems, and it's a very useful tool. So I want to reiterate, these things are tools, they're not toys. There's a difference. So you've got to be able to use them correctly in class. So belt sander.